great to see such a good turnout, and there's a few faces here that I've seen in other workshops that we've had. So August has been a bit of a busy month for us here at the Bendigo Library because of Family History Month. So we've had lots and lots of different sessions, and hopefully some of you, I know you have been able to catch some of those more interesting sessions that have been on. My name's Annette Delaney, and I'm a member in the Bendigo Family History Group. We actually meet upstairs on a Wednesday and a Saturday. So if anyone's looking at information and they're a bit stuck with their family history research, we've got a great group of volunteers that will definitely be able to help you out. So we might just get started to this topic, which is a big topic, and squeezing it into an hour. I always like, I tried to cut out whatever I can so I don't keep you looking at slide after slide, but there's just so much that we really need to have an understanding of when we first start doing our DNA. Is everyone able to hear me? Okay, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, so why bother to test DNA? I think people ask me that question all the time. They say, why would we do it? And they say, I've already got my family history and I've had it done for like 15 or 20 years, and we've got all of our family, we know who they are. And I always think, wow, I wish I knew who all my family was, because it's just something that keeps us going every day of the week. And even of a night when I sit down, I'm not a TV person, I tend to use the iPad a bit, and I'm always finding something or somebody that I didn't know. So I think it just goes on forever. And by using DNA, it's a great way of actually breaking down some of those myths that we had, that we always thought that we knew who our grandpa was. So that's an added benefit. I always look at it that way. So if you're already doing your traditional family research, this is actually an added benefit to you. The information that you get might actually help you with health. So if you do 23andMe, for example, you get a whole lot of information about your health. There's other sites that you can upload your DNA to, which is Prometheus. So I don't want to tell you everything all at once here because it's just too much information. Johnny, you might like to try and fix the microphone. It keeps disappearing on me. So is DNA testing results reliable? That's the other thing that people say to me. How spot on is it? Because I'm not really sure that it is so reliable. Well, it's absolutely reliable, and it's really true. And there's all of those sayings that DNA doesn't lie, and you get sick to death of hearing it if you're into DNA, but it is actually right. So you might have been told stories by grandparents or parents or neighbours over the years, and you've thought that they were telling you what they believed was true. They might have been, because it might be the next generation that they didn't actually know about. So once you've done your DNA, you'll blow it all apart. So people often say to me, but I know who my parents and grandparents are. And I always say, but do you? You're never sure. So an essential tool for your family history research, that's how I find DNA. It's absolutely one of the tools that we should use if we're at all interested in doing our DNA. So many of us have developed an extensive tree, as I said before, based on the paper trail that you've researched thoroughly, like you're all good genealogists, I know that. You haven't just grabbed what other people have put on Ancestry. And sometimes we think we've got it right, and actually you can get a surprise. So you might have spent many, many years chasing the wrong rooster. So, and I've got a good example that I can give you about that in a little while. So brick walls can be broken down. So you might have brick walls that you just absolutely can't get beyond. Once you've done your DNA, hopefully that is actually going to help break that wall down. And finding unknown family. So there might be surprises out there. And I don't know any family that hasn't found a surprise. And that's something that we also have to be aware of. So the adding value to our existing research, you discover cousins that you never knew, and they might live anywhere in the world. So the locations can be absolutely varied. It can be right on our doorstep, or it can be in remote areas of the world that you had no idea that you ever had cousins. And I think one of the biggest shocks for me was discovering I had so many American cousins. I had no idea before I did my DNA several years ago that I had all of these cousins in America. And if somebody had have asked me several years ago, I would have said, oh no, I don't think we've got any relatives in America. That's not true. And so many people over there have done their DNA that you will find that you'll definitely have cousins in America. So you might also find what I said before, unknown family. So it might be a sibling, it might be a parent, it might be a grandparent. It could be absolutely anybody, and it might just blow away all of the ideas that you had about who your family was. So there are surprises, and I mentioned to you once again, the health aspect is very, very important for you as well. So if you're looking at specific information, that health area is very important because there's lots of things that are genetically based, and it might be something that's come down in your family. Some of you might have already done a family tree based on all of your ancestors you know and what they've actually passed away from. So you might already have that information. I always think I'm going to do it. I still haven't done it. I really do want to sit down and do that because we've got lots and lots of death certificates and things, but it's just one of those things like today I thought I was going to have a full day to do what I wanted to do. It hasn't worked out. It happens every day. So I'll tell you about my surprises. So I thought it's easier to tell you exactly what's happened with me doing DNA several years ago. So 2 brick walls and no obvious matches. So for me, I was tracing, and actually I was thinking about it today, and they were both my 2 times great grandfathers on different sides. An African American unknown cousins. Actually one popped up, and when I got the first one, it really freaked me out because it was back when I first got my ancestry done, and I thought, oh no, the hackers have got into ancestry as well. And I was like really cautious about contacting this person, thinking, is this person really a DNA match to me or isn't it? Because there were so many instances of people hacking into everything. But yes, absolutely. So we've got lots of African American unknown cousins, and it probably goes back to those slave ships that were going over to America, Jamaica and other places, and we haven't worked it out yet. So it's one of those things that I do when I've got nothing else to do, trying to find these, because they're so far back it makes it very difficult. A lovely Aboriginal woman, she was born in the Kimberley and she's now actually a lawyer. Is that not working? No. Oh, sorry. What's happened to my team up there not telling me?
I'm waiting for you to finish the story and then I was going to say something.
Sorry about that.
All those pictures they missed the rooster.
It's because when we're on a slideshow, we're just opening it up, like there's a link there.
Now we're right.
Yeah.
Okay, so I've got to get past him. We're up to here. To the next one. Right. Sorry about that. My team up the back not telling me it's not working. The Aboriginal woman that's over in the Kimberley, the interesting story about her, she's actually a lawyer and an author and lives in Wollongong. But when I actually noticed her email address, because she luckily uploaded to Jed Match where you get to see people's email, I discovered that she had an unusual email address. It was called juddigan@gmail.com, juddigangirl@gmail.com. And I thought, Juddigan, that's over in the Kimberley, because I'd been there not long before and I'd actually stayed there. And I stayed with Biddy's house. So I knew exactly where this person was probably from, because you don't get very much information on your DNA. And when I contacted her, she told me that she's actually trying to find her father. She was born over there, her mother is definitely over there. She's a distant cousin for me, so she wasn't a really close cousin. And she'd had some, I actually started chatting to her and I said, if you want to share your DNA with me, that's something that you'll learn about as well. I'm actually happy to look at it and see if I can find any links to our family, because I had no idea. And she matched myself and a couple of my cousins, so I knew it was on my maternal side, but apart from that, I couldn't work it out. So she had these great matches, like first and second cousins, so they were really big matches. And as soon as she'd contact them, and they knew that she wasn't someone from around their parts where they were living in South Australia, they were so nervous they wouldn't tell her anything. So I said to her, oh, let's see what we can find out. So I start drilling down with these ladies. Oh, we look like we've got a distant match, and talking about, you know, way back in the distant past. So she gave me her whole family tree. and was like, thank you. So then I was able to help my friend Munya, and we identified who her dad was, which was great. Another one, we come up with some cousin matches to a maternal great uncle who vanished. So he vanished, and if you've got people that have vanished, often they'll keep the same Christian names, or they might keep the same initials, but generally there's always a hint there. And ours was a James Anthony, and he kept James Anthony, and he changed his surname, but it did start with B. So if he had any initials, he wasn't going to stuff up on that because he knew that he was going to remember who he was. And it was only because I found a match up in Campbelltown, New South Wales, and then I realised I kept looking at my shared matches and discovering what group she was in, so I thought, this is interesting. And then we discussed, she had all the information about him. And she also knew that he had changed his name because she'd been working on it for a very long time. And she had an old auntie in South Australia that had done so much work on it and had all these original documents. So we've got a lot out of that relationship. It's been fabulous. I mentioned before many of the cousin matches in the USA, so that actually confirmed for us our 3 times great-great-grandparents and further back. Some branches are actually stronger than others, and so what you find is that some of the DNA that's passed down to you is actually stronger than what it is for everybody. And so if you've got siblings that have actually tested, you'll find a different set of DNA that they've actually inherited. It's very, very random. And then I guess the realisation, the other surprise for us, the big one, was realising that some branches weren't what we thought we were. So I guess I can say that we actually thought, my grandmother thought she was a McLaren, and she definitely wasn't a McLaren. And we've discovered all through DNA that we should have been McIsaac. So we've found all of those people, and we've now connected with heaps of cousins in New York, and cousins, there's some in Queensland, and there's still a couple in Scotland. So we're definitely Scottish, but no, he didn't live in 10 Rose Street in Glasgow. That was all a story. And we don't even know when he came here. Probably 1860, around about, give or take, but we don't know how or when and what name he used to come. We've searched all sorts of names and we still haven't found him. So just to give you a little bit more detail to understand that, we've got 22 pairs of autosomes. So we get 50% from mum and we get 50% from dad. And we also get a pair of the sex chromosomes. So the men get an X and a Y, and us women, we get a double X. So we don't have any of the Y, so we can't do the Y DNA testing. So if you've got men in your family that you're trying to find a paternal line, you get them to test the Y DNA because it goes from father to father to father, so straight back that way. There's a high level of accuracy with DNA testing, as I said before, and DNA doesn't lie. And I'm on lots of Facebook groups about DNA, and you should join them too. And people are always saying, this can't be right. Ancestry's made a really big mistake. I know when my mother got married, I know when her sister got married. And I just love reading it because people still are really, really obsessed with the information that they were given and that's been handed down. And honestly, when I start groups, because we have DNA groups happening here, I always say, forget about the surnames, absolutely look at the DNA, don't look at what you already know, because what you already know might not be quite right. And I always say, test any of the oldest people in your family first, because they've got so much history and they're so much further up the tree. So if you've got any aunties, uncles, grandparents, whatever, that are older than you, grab them first and get their DNA tested. But you need to explain to them, you know, what can happen if they do. They might find surprises. Then you need, once you've done your DNA and you get it back, you actually need to set up a DNA tree. So not your beautifully researched family tree that you've actually got now, that you know you've checked everything with a fine-tooth comb and you haven't just nicked it from somebody else's on Ancestry, but you've got a really good tree. We don't want to touch that. We actually just want to pop our DNA into it. So you start with yourself, you make it a private and unsearchable tree on Ancestry so nobody can see it except you or whoever else you share it with. And then you start by adding these DNA matches, and always start with the best matches that you've got. Obviously not your first or second cousins if you know who they are, But if you don't know who they are, perfect to start with them. And especially the people that have got a tree and they might have a parent or a grandparent. So we start by getting that information in and we start to build it back until all of a sudden we join up. So that's the theory behind it. It sounds simple and it can take forever. Making sure it's happening, yes it is. Okay, so just touching on that technical side again, I know it's so much information for you, and when you go away from here you can watch some YouTubes and try and get your head around it even more. So we have 46 chromosomes, so we get 23 from each of our parent, and 22 of those are called autosomes. So when we test with Ancestry, that's what we're testing, and there's also a mixture of our sex chromosomes goes through with different family members anyway, but basically we're testing our autosomal DNA. So there's 22 pairs found in the nucleus of every single cell in our body, which is just unbelievable. And if you're from a scientific background, you'll say, yes, I understand all that, but I sometimes look at it and think, that is amazing, really. So your autosomal DNA is inherited equally. That is definitely inherited equally, mum, dad. Even if we don't know who mum or dad is, it's definitely inherited. This is just what it looks like if you look at your pairs. So I just thought I'd just show you what those 22 sets of chromosomes look like. Plus down the bottom corner there, you've got your XY chromosome. And your Y chromosome is not a very big one. It's a very short one, actually. But I've tested my father and his brother, and we even got surprises with that, because before 1700 we weren't who we thought we were. So it happens. So just reiterating that, 50% of it is from each parent, but you're only getting 50% from mum and you're leaving 50% behind. So always remember that. So sometimes people say, oh, I'm not bothering to get my siblings tested, why would I? Because each sibling will be quite different, absolutely different, because you're getting a very different mix. Siblings get 50% random DNA from mum and 50% random DNA from dad, and it's like, I always think Tats Lotto, so when you see all the balls tumble out, that's exactly what's happening. So 25% of it will be from your grandparents, so it's only 25% of their full 100% who they are. 12.5% will come from your great-grandparents and 6.2% from your great-great-grandparents. So then it absolutely disappears quite rapidly after that. So the probability of a match, now this one here, it's a very busy slide as you can see there on the right, but it just gives you an idea on what the probability is of actually having a match with those cousins. And I'm using this second slide that's colourful there that come in there, that frame, I'm using that because it just shows how random we all are. So obviously the two top ones are myself. The second one that I've got the red circle around, that's my first cousin. So you can see on that same line where Janice's name is, we actually match at quite a high centimorgan, which is 918, 926, because I've got a super kit that I've made, so that's why it's a little bit different there. But then if you look straight across the line, on Janice's line, we like Janice because she picks up great DNAs, especially she gets good matches from our Scottish connections and one particular branch of our Irish connection. She seems to have got a nice little parcel of DNA. So if you look right across to the right there, you'll see, I'm trying to work out, you'll see a number, A919140. That's our known second cousin, so we actually know that second cousin. Then if you come straight down the line, you'll see all of those pink boxes, these ones here, which is sort of pinky reddy colour, whatever you like. You'll see that there's no matches in there. So when we first started trying to say, are these people in America really related to us, or are they pretending that their great-great-grandfather was a sibling of our great-great-grandfather from Kilkenny, we weren't too sure. But as we started to see the rollout of different people testing, so on that chart you've got people from Australia, you've got America, and you've got Ireland. And so without doubt, it proved to us that we actually were all related. And Janice was the clinker for us. She actually clinched the deal because we could see that she matched incredibly well. So that really confirmed for us. And then we looked at some of the other people. There's mothers and sons, and there's nephews. So we've got a whole mix of people there. But you can see us being first cousins, we're around the 900 centimorgans, which is what you'd expect to see. This is another program that I use. Once you've got your DNA, you can actually download it to your computer and you can upload to lots of other places. And it's always the very best thing to do. Don't leave your DNA just sitting with Ancestry, or if you happen to have tested with MyHeritage, don't leave it just sitting with MyHeritage, because you're missing out on possibilities of really good matches with other organisations. So DNA Painter is a program that's available on the internet for us, and what you'll see, this is called the Shared Centimorgan project. So you'll see the box that's got how to read this chart there. Well, when this is online, if you've got a match with somebody, and say I'll use Janice again, 900 centimorgans, if I put that into that box and hit enter, it'll tell me the exact types of people that I'm probably that relationship with. So it's a really beautiful tool when you really have no idea, because we don't always know who the cousins are that pop up. There's lots of mysteries. It's very interesting. So I'm saying caution in red, because how will you feel if you discover that your daddy isn't your daddy? Because that is a very real situation, because a lot of people, there might have been somebody that was working away and they happened to have an affair with somebody, and then daddy came home and it just went along as if nothing, there was no problem. Other times people knew that when they married somebody that person was actually pregnant, and they took that on board and said, I want to be responsible for you and the baby, and it will be my baby. And so it's given that name. And then sometimes they don't even know. Sometimes they don't know. And there might be, what do you call it? You know, the programs where you can, lost the word for it, test tube, you know, like the test tube babies, IVF. Yeah. So people might have gone and they were having trouble getting pregnant, and they might have gone to one of the clinics and they might have actually got either an egg or they might have got the sperm, either, they don't know, and they often don't tell their kids. And sometimes those people are dead and gone before somebody's done the DNA and they had no idea. So it can be very, very traumatic. So how might other people in the family feel? Like, how might Granny feel if she's raised the youngest, who you thought was her youngest daughter? It was actually her granddaughter. So her eldest might have had a baby out of wedlock. And that happened lots and lots of times. I've got one of those too. We've all got quite a lot of things happening out there. There were illegitimate births, unknown parentage for the adoptees, stolen generation that was just taken away, and records changed, etc., etc. And I know lots of those people. Or separated by conflict. So it might have been in some country where there was a lot of conflict and they were separated, and then they had no records, and documents were definitely destroyed. My two children are actually adopted, and I know for a fact that the birth certificates were absolutely incorrect. So it made my job of trying to trace their families very, very difficult. But I'm a real good detective, so I'm working hard on it at the moment. So I say there's often a bad apple in every family. You never quite know where that might be. So please be cautious, and before you talk in anyone else in your family to do a test, explain to them. We may find out something that we didn't know. My husband discovered that he'd had a half sibling, and that sibling was born before his mum and dad married. But we didn't know that, and that all appeared not that long ago, which we were happy about, except unfortunately the lady had actually passed away because she was quite a bit older than them. So Jed Match, that's another one of the programs that I mentioned to you. You should upload to Jed Match. Jed Match is a fantastic program, and it's actually, you've probably seen it in the news fairly recently, that they're starting to find unknown cases through murder or bodies that have been found, especially in America, and it's just starting to be used here in Australia. But there's actually a group in America, and they're doing very, very well with identifying human remains. They've got hundreds and hundreds that are still not identified. So this is a really good thing. So the police departments can actually use that. If you don't want to be involved because you think, I think I've got a murderer in my family, you don't have to tick that box, so they can't access it. So you just don't tick that box to say they can get in there. A real good benefit about Jed Match that I love is that if somebody's tested with Ancestry, somebody else with MyHeritage or Living DNA or Family Tree DNA, there's lots of places where you can test. If they've tested in those companies, we might never ever come across them. But if everybody can upload to Jed Match, that's a great way of being able to check how these people relate to us. And the benefit of it, they show the email. So whatever email you use to actually start up Jed Match, there's actually an email, because one of the things about Ancestry you find is that it's very difficult sending messages through their message system. You never quite know whether people get the message or not. So with Jed Match, you know they've got the, well, you hope they've got the email from you, and if they don't answer, it's because they don't want to. And we always have to remember that not everybody tests to find out about their DNA, because it's all over the TV all the time. Find out where you come from. Test your ethnicity, you know, where do your family come from? Have you got any African in you? Have you got any Indian in you? Have you got any Chinese in you? People are doing it for that purpose. And often they don't even know, when they open their DNA, that there's another button they can push and show all the people that they're actually related to, that have come up as DNA matches. So it's certainly something that if you're new to it, you probably need some help, and you can always come back here and get some help from us. So you actually, it's a free account, and I think that's another benefit of it. So I always say to people, use the free accounts until you really have to pay. But Jed Match does have an extra little program that you can click on, and you actually pay. I just pay a month at a time. It gives you a whole lot more tools. So I only do that every now and then. So the good thing is the user lookup. So I've highlighted the yellow at the top. The user lookup. So if you've got that person's DNA, that email, you can pop the email in for what the person's name, and then you'll get information. So you might find that they actually are on your Ancestry or on your MyHeritage. So that's one that I check. The second yellow line down, one-to-many DNA comparison, I always double check that one, because that shows all the people that you might be coming up as a DNA match to. And then there's another one of my favourites. I've just got these few that I really like to use. So people who match both or one of the two kits. So if you know you've got a maternal relative or a paternal relative, if you put both of your numbers in, the group of people that pop up there as shared matches are going to be either your paternal or your maternal side. So that way you can actually work out exactly where you're from. The other one at the bottom there, are your parents related? That's another excellent tool that you've got with Jed Match. And that one may give you a few surprises, but sometimes it's back like at second or third cousin level or whatever. But it's really good idea to be able to do that, because like so many communities, and especially small communities, a shipload of people arrived, there wasn't that many people there, and they intermarried. So there's lots and lots of reasons why you might have cousins, and I'm always finding people that say, oh, I got my DNA done, I didn't realise my husband and I are third cousins, and they had no idea until they've actually got their DNA done. And honestly, we were all told these things, you know, oh, if you marry your cousin, there'll be issues, but I know lots and lots of people that are cousins. You get tested, so that's the important thing for you to all find out. Where can I go and get tested? Online is the best way to go. I always suggest to people, and it's not that I'm affiliated with them or anything else, but Ancestry is your number one go-to, because there's now around about 24 million testers in the world that have tested with Ancestry. So it's your biggest organisation to test with. Then you've got MyHeritage, Family Tree DNA, 23andMe, Living DNA. So they're the main testing sites. I think 23andMe comes up as the second.
Ancestry.
MyHeritage. No, MyHeritage. Yeah, 23andMe. So it's Ancestry, 23andMe, MyHeritage, and Jed Match, Family Tree DNA, Living DNA.
Ancestry's got a sale on at the moment for Father's Day.
I know, so now's the time to get it. We always wait for sales, so I've popped that in the bottom there. Special discounts at the moment with Ancestry, and I spotted that come up this morning. I think it's around $90. Like many years ago, if you wanted to go and do something like that, it was going to cost you hundreds or thousands of dollars, and so people didn't do it. And then it was probably around $150 or something like that. And it's so affordable now if you think about it. Like, I think the special's around about $90, and it's fantastic. So if you test with Ancestry or 23andMe, you can download, but you can't upload. So you're better off to go with Ancestry and then upload to Family Tree DNA. You can't upload to 23andMe, MyHeritage, Living DNA, and Jed Match. Get the value out of that one little test you do. One, you know what? It's less than a teaspoon of spit. That's all you've got to do. But it can be difficult to do. So that just gives you a graph on all of the different testing sites. So as you can see, Ancestry is the biggest one there, and then 23andMe. So that is the second highest testing group. And then we've got MyHeritage, and then the others are quite low, but it's still worthwhile. And I can give you a very, very good example on being in all of those different testing sites. My daughter, whose family I'm still trying to trace, she has very few very good matches at all. Maybe she's got 100 all up, but there's only 20 that you'd even look at. The others are so small. So I noticed on Ancestry, and I've got hers everywhere, and I noticed on Ancestry that she had a match of around about 56 centimorgans, around about that. And I thought, oh, that's reasonable, you know, that I could probably do something with that. And the next thing, he contacted me. He's trying to find his dad, and he lives in Scotland. So it's like, oh, okay. So I've become very friendly with him and contacted him backwards and forwards. We have lots of conversations. Anyway, I already had her on MyHeritage, and I went back and I looked, and then there was a man there that was actually living in Germany. And I thought, he's around about the same centimorgans. That's an interesting situation. I didn't contact him because I thought, like my kids, maybe he's adopted. So I didn't even bother to contact him. I've looked at his name for like 3 years. So just out of the blue a few months back, I decided to contact him. Now, my friend Sandy up in Scotland told me that he's grown up with his mum, who's Scottish, and his dad was training to be a pilot in Scotland. And then he went back to Asia, where he came from, and Sandy was born. So he was reared by his mum and his grandparents, and that's all he knew. And he said he never wanted to disappoint his mum by saying he'd like to know who his dad was, so he never asked any questions. Then his mum died, so then he had no information whatsoever, only that he knew that his dad come from Asia somewhere. So then I decided, oh, that's so interesting, that story. Wow, you know, it's obviously that's the connection to my daughter. So then I look at the MyHeritage one, and I contact Martin finally in Germany, and Martin says, he actually answered me, which was amazing because he's very slow at getting back. And he answered and he said, oh, my father was learning to be a pilot, and my mother was living and working in Scotland, and he came from Asia, and he knew his name. And he said he was obviously from a wealthy family because he drove a Volvo. And he goes, that's all I can tell you, I don't know anything else. And I thought, wow, that is so amazing. They have to be siblings, half siblings. So I said to him, you know, that there's somebody else that I've seen on a different site that I believe may be related. But this guy, he didn't trust me at all. So I go back to Sandy in Scotland and I said, you know what, I think you might have another half sibling out there. I said, I've found somebody with exactly the same story as you've got. And he said, really? And I said, if you trust me to download your DNA, and upload it to MyHeritage, we'll wait and see. I said, it might take us 2 or 3 weeks, but I said, let's see. And I said, this fellow's told me exactly the same story you told me. And I said, but the good thing is, I said, he knows the fellow's name. So then I actually got his DNA, uploaded it. They come up as half siblings. Wow, I knew it had to be like, and they were both born in 1967, so they're 20 years older than my daughter. So then our mate Martin in Germany still wouldn't believe it, because he just couldn't believe it. He was blown away by the information. So what they ended up doing, they started to communicate. I said to Sandy, it's over to you two now. I can't interfere with this. You've got to work it out. So now they're communicating. They've actually done another DNA test. I didn't ask who or how. And my goodness, Martin now believes, oh, you're my half brother. So now we have a team of 2 that are tracking down their daddy. And one of my cousins, who's here tonight, got on the internet and Googled the name, because we grabbed the name as soon as we heard it, and found that this man had passed away in 2019 in Malaysia. So we know his name, we know he lived in Australia, we know he has a son in South Australia and another one in New South Wales. So these 2 now, and I've been to the electoral office and I can't find them, so it's over to these 2 now. They're trying to work together now to find out where the rest of their siblings are and let the family know. Amazing, it's absolutely amazing. And there's a bit more to that story, but I'm not going to go into it at this stage because it's too lengthy. But it just shows you, by being in different places, that's how you're going to connect with people. And if it hadn't been for me in the middle saying, you both need to be on the same platform, they would never have met each other or known about it. So the types of tests that we can do is the autosomal, which I mentioned to you. That's the main one that people do. And there's also the Y-DNA, which is the one that the males in your family can do, and also the mitochondrial DNA, which is for your mother's mother's mother. So they work back in that way. And Ancestry is the autosomal DNA. Test with the 2 largest databases. If you're really, sorry.
Could I start on the Y-DNA? Is that a test that's all automatically done through Ancestry?
No, you have to go to Family Tree DNA. Family Tree DNA is the only place that is currently testing. Ancestry used to several years ago, but they don't anymore. But Family Tree DNA, they actually do, and that's actually a cheek swab. It's even easier. That's a good one to do.
How many years ago was it?
Sorry.
How many years ago was that they did it?
Oh, a few years, because I know people that said
7
that
or 8
they...
years ago? 7 or 8 years ago?
Oh,
That's when I
probably,
think of
yes.
that.
Yeah, it would have been, yeah. And some people have still got results, but others don't have those results anymore, because I hear people talking about it. I certainly wasn't involved with it at that stage. So if you're going to test, I say definitely test with the 2 largest databases, and personally I would say Ancestry for a start. If you can afford it, do 23andMe as well, because you get different information, and we've actually found cousins through both. Then upload it everywhere else you can free. So the places I mentioned, MyHeritage, Jed Match, Living DNA. Living DNA is one that we were told a couple of years ago that it was going to break all records, and we were going to find everyone that we were related to in the UK and Scotland and Ireland, and it was going to break down all of those areas. We were going to find amazing things. It hasn't quite worked, but it will. Eventually it'll get there, because at the moment Americans are so big on testing, and they've been doing it for years, so that's why Ancestry has so many testers. So it's good to start with that one anyway. And it's actually, once you get using their website, it's actually fairly easy and straightforward to use. Once again, if you have any trouble with it once you get to that stage, come in and talk to us and we can help you with it. So this is a big warning for people. Once you've done your tests, screenshot everything as soon as possible, because all of a sudden, if somebody pops up as your dad or your daughter or your son, or even like a first cousin, people freak out and they might block you, and they might have been the person that had a tree. So you actually get photos quickly. Once you realise your DNA's out there, when I know I've got some coming in, I'll be like, if I wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning, I have a sneaky look in case it's there. And I can't wait, and then I'll screenshot everything just in case. Because I've helped lots of adoptees, so I've worked with people that are really looking for people, so I know what you need to do. So actually make sure you do that, and keep a list of those shared matches. So it's all too technical to tell you if you haven't used it before, but when you've got a match, if you click on you and that person, a whole bunch of people usually come up that match both of you. That's another hint to say which part of your family it's from. Sometimes it's really disappointing because you've got a good match and there's 1 or 2 people, so it's not always that straightforward, but it should be. And if they've got a tree, you can usually click their tree open, screenshot it straight away, because you might never get another chance. With my daughter, she had a match to a fellow up in Sydney, and it was one of her very first matches, and I contacted him and he wasn't at all willing to help me. As soon as he knew that, he goes, how can I be related to you? So I had to then fess up and tell him it's for my daughter. And he said, oh no, he said, that wouldn't be correct. He said, you wouldn't be related to us. And I thought, really? And I'd already got his tree, thank goodness. And I only just found that again the other day. And I've been really lucky to come across a 200-page booklet that a lady has produced from the area where my daughter came from, in Sri Lanka. And I know where he comes from. Even though he blocked me and he made his tree private, I already had a photo of it. So always make sure, as soon as you get your results in, that you do those few things. Because people get frightened and they think, oh no, I didn't know my father had any other kids, or I didn't know my grandmother had a child before she got married. Like all of a sudden it falls into place. We've had it in our own family. We've found people and we've had to work out who it was, and then we've had to say, actually found a DNA match here that I think it's quite close to you. So it does happen. So basically what we've talked about, what I've talked about and you've listened patiently, is the tip of the iceberg. There is so much to learn, and honestly I'm still learning, and I just feel like I know this much out of this topic, and I've been fairly interested in it for about 7 years now. But I just believe you just need to read, find like-minded friends. Like we've got a whole group of people here tonight, and I say in all of my sessions for whatever I do, find a buddy, whether it's a cousin, whether it's a friend, whether it's somebody that's interested, because you'll find all the other people at home like glaze over as soon as you start talking family tree or your DNA, and it's like, oh no, not that again. So find a buddy that's actually interested in the same things that you're interested in, and it's really good to have 2 different sets of eyes. I'm a big picture person, so I really quickly can see connections. So if I find a good connection, I think, oh, all of those people fit in here. My other cousin's very good on the detail, and she'll drill down and she'll find the detail, and then we think, oh no, that can't fit in here, can't fit there. So working together, you've got different strengths. And I can look on Google tonight and you can look tomorrow and you'll find something totally different. And so I just say, keep working with other people. Join groups like we are. The Bendigo Family History Group is a great group. There's people that have been involved for like 40 years. We've got amazing records here as well. And so if you find anything that you need to go back and try and work out where this person might have come from, you never know, we just might have that record upstairs that's going to help you. So go to the reputable websites. There's lots and lots of YouTube videos out there, and often if I'm bored, which is not very often, I might just pop onto YouTube and look up something and just watch that YouTube video. They're only like short, so it actually keeps building your knowledge so that you're growing from it. Ancestry, the actual website, has lots and lots of learning tools on there. All of them. DNA Painter has got a whole range of things that you can, that's a whole subject that I could talk to you about. ISOG.org, that is a fantastic website that's got lots and lots of resources and tools on. All of those ones that I've got listed there are really fantastic. The Genetic Genealogist, he's actually Blaine Bendigo, he's on Facebook as well. And if you join some of these people that are on Facebook, you'll get so much information. join an interest group such as what we're actually running a DNA group that we'll be running until Christmas with this particular group, and it's been really great because we've all learnt lots of things from that. So the Facebook groups, there's lots and lots of sites. If you're interested in a certain area, like I don't use Facebook for gossip and all the junk that's out there, but I do love it for my genealogy, and I'm in all sorts of groups all over the world, and you'd be really surprised at the connections and the information and tools that you actually get from them.